So we've got a really interesting topic, the new TA leader.
Talent acquisition function should really be about finding talent, period. Internal mobility process sits with the career development team, and it doesn't make sense there. Where it should sit is with the people who are expert at finding talent. Why can't we start thinking about TA functions like sales organizations?
We're very similar to a sales function. We should adopt the same process.
Scheduling through humans. We need to talk.
Yeah.
Those humans could actually be doing more critical white glove experiences for candidates. It's one page. Current situation, implication, and the recommendation.
What would you say are the kind of three main things a TA leader should be thinking about to kind of future-proof themselves? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hiring on All Cylinders. Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Allison Allen, co-founder at Leadership Rewired and strategic advisor at Texni. Welcome.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good to be here. Glad to be here.
So we've got a really interesting topic to get today, which is the new TA leader. And I think that it's very clear that things have dramatically shifted and changed over the past few years. And how we think about ourselves and our roles in TA is changing. So I think it's a really good topic to talk about and something that you have a lot of experience in working for some of the best technology companies in the world. So I guess I'd like to start from a place of what is the rationale for thinking about the new TA leader and it changing in the first place?
You know, it's funny. I actually think there's a paradigm shift across the people team in terms of what the new leaders of each of the people team functions need to be and what they need to be thinking about. But more specifically for TA, I think it's about, you know, just what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, right? We went through the Great Resignation, and it was like hire recruiters, and more pumping of bodies in. And then just this last year, in a very sad way, you saw big functions like TA get hit the worst. And I think people within TA functions and leaders of TA functions are coming out of this going, okay, how do we not let this happen again? I also think with organizations rethinking how they want to find talent and this whole shift to skills-based hiring is putting a new focus on the power of what a TA function can do. So the leader can't be thinking about, you know, butts and seats. They have to be thinking about organizational transformation, change, the use of technology like AI, and really how do you shift the role of the recruiter and the sourcer so that it's more of a consultative or advisory role and not a sort of heads down trying to find resumes, trying to find people just to fill a slate.
So
I think it's just the world is actually pushing it and just what's happened in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's really true. I think that everyone is, in agreement that those 21, 22 years were pretty insane.
And brutal.
Yeah, and brutal.
Yeah.
And it's no one's fault. If you're a talent leader and your company's asking you, just putting headcount on top of headcount, you need to react in some way. And I think the only, weapon that people felt they had was, or the option they had, which is to add more people and add more headcount to their recruiting function. Because they were just in the midst of it. They were trying to fly the plane whilst building it. And now, retrospectively looking, I think people are saying, well, let's not do that again. Let's be more strategic. Let's think about how, if this happens again, what we can do, how we can build our teams. And I do think there's another thing that you touched upon there, which is there seems to be this real desire for TA leaders to prove their value and not just be needed when there's tons of hiring to do.
When there's tons of hiring to do and to, in some respects, demonstrate impact in much more strategic ways. For example, you know, I've been in a lot of organizations where the internal mobility process sits with, you know, the career development team. And it doesn't make sense there because, you know, where it should sit is with the people who are, you know, expert at finding talent. And we need to create this sort of world in which TA has access to information about top talented people within an organization. Why? Not because it's easier to recruit, but the time to market is actually quicker for the business, right? You find someone who's really talented inside the organization who actually is ready for another role, and you make it really, really easy for them to move around within the organization. It's one of the most strategic plays an organization can have. But often because you have internal mobility over here and TA over here, and TA is just about outward facing, internal mobility is owned by somebody else, you're actually creating a break in process and a struggle that doesn't necessarily need to happen. So I think the talent acquisition function should really be about finding talent, period. Whether it's internal, external, in different markets, and being proactive about bringing that information to the business. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was just like, and I said this before, why can't we start thinking about TA functions like sales organizations?
Yeah.
Think about that. Most sales organizations sell a product. What's the product for TA? The business, the role, the culture, everything about it. So if we thought about TA that way, it just starts to think, there's a real strategic play that TA functions can have in organizations that isn't just about hiring when it's really, really important to grow and downsizing when it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you actually think about the parallels, like you said, the business is the product, the role is the product, your people are your customer. And then you look at all the kind of buzzwords in TA at the moment, which are candidate experience.
Yes.
That's like customer experience. It's like customer success.
Yes.
And then you try and cross-sell and upsell your product once people are in, which is maybe the internal mobility.
Yes.
It's like, how do you promote people? How do you move them into things that keep them engaged and retained in your community?
Yes.
So there is absolutely parallels. And I think we spoke earlier about this in that it seems recruiting is like 5 years behind a lot of the the tech tools that sales are using, like an ATS or like email sequencing or whatever else. We kind of just need to give up and say, we're very similar to a sales function. 100%. We should adopt the same process. Talentful provides flexible recruiting solutions to the world's most ambitious companies. Are you thinking about ways to add flexibility to your talent function? With recent market volatility and hiring set to return to growth mode in the near future, there's never been a better time to choose the right partner to help you scale. Talentful's embedded sourcing, recruiting, coordination, and talent advisory services have been trusted by the world's leading brands. Companies such as Atlassian, Microsoft, Expedia, Pinterest, Waymo, and more. Whether you're hiring across engineering, go-to-market, or G&A, Talentful has got you covered. To find out how Talentful can help you, visit talentful.com.
I think it's because TA has always appeared transactional and has always appeared, focused on just getting people in. And then everybody else would take care of the people once they're here. And I think the time is now, again, especially with the focus around skills-based hiring, to really rethink the space and to really think about it as, I know this is poo-pooed in some organizations, but hunters and farmers, right?
Yeah.
Who are the TA folks in the organization that are about cultivating the relationships with the top talented people in the organization? So before they even think about jumping and going somewhere else, they already know what their next destination is. It's not far-fetched. And when you think about technology, there's no group. And trust me, I think in my career, I've probably worked in every group fully, probably with the exception of like really ingrained in HRIS. There's no group, in my opinion, in the people function that would benefit from a huge investment in technology than the TA team.
Absolutely. You've just made me think, as you were speaking, the reason why maybe leaders, or let's just say investors or CEOs, see salespeople as so valuable is because they generate revenue. Their output is directly tied to making money. I wonder if we do a bad job as TA people of making that connection. I never really hear people speak about that. Actually, when I think about just all the conversations I'm having with TA leaders, I'm having with people in TA, they don't flag, okay, well, if you retain these people for 12 months longer, this is how much it costs the business or saves the business.
Right.
If we bring these people in 2 weeks faster and they, whatever else, they hit productivity 1 month faster, this is how much it makes the business.
Yes.
And I think that feels like the missing gap.
It is a huge gap. And I can't take credit for this because this is something that was said to me years ago. And I was just in a conversation with a very close friend who used to be a VP of talent at Meta. And she and I were talking, and she was talking about how they are actually able to say through their people analytics function how much each engineer they hire will produce in revenue. Like they tell that story. Now think about that for a second. If you told a story as a recruiter, you hired this year 20 engineers. Each of those engineers 6 months later are able to produce XYZ, which is contributing to XYZ of revenue. Then all of a sudden you become like a huge, benefactor to the organization because your transaction isn't just about getting the person in the seat. Your transaction is about retention. Just before I exited from Expedia, we were talking about this notion of like, should TA have a retention metric?
It's really
right?
interesting. Yeah.
So if you think about that, and I know some TA folks are probably going to be like, get her off the air. But it's like, if we're able to tell a story around the people that we hired and the quality that was so good and the fact that X percentage of them are still here or they've moved within the organization to other roles, now we start to really truly demonstrate the actual value that TA brings in their recruiting processes and hiring people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you, the big pushback on the retention piece is, when I've heard it, people have an issue with it, is, okay, well, when we get them in, there's so many other variables, once they're in the business, they could have a terrible manager, they could have terrible onboarding, they could have X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to feel like, how relevant is that? And it is relevant. But when a sales team is working together, they sell a product and they get comped on the sale.
But they also get comped on
renewals.
Retention.
Renewals and
Retaining,
retentions.
yeah.
And they don't have the ability to necessarily impact the retention. It could be a terrible product that people don't have, don't.
It could be a terrible product. It could be the customer service wasn't good. It could be, I'm thinking right now about a Volkswagen I just bought that I wish I'd never invested in, and what the experience has been like to try to deal with this car. Look, I think it's an interesting road to go down to think about how TA can have some impact on retention, because you are right. Once onboarding happens, which again I also think should be in the TA function. I actually think that TA should somehow be involved with everything up to the first 90 days of a person being hired, but that's another story. But when you think about that, their manager could be bad. There could be all of these other factors that impact whether or not someone is retained. But in most cases, if you have an aligned TA function, an aligned talent function, an aligned business partner function, all of those things should work themselves out. And if someone leaves because their manager was bad, that should somehow, through analytics, be noted. That isn't a ding on TA, right? But if someone is retained and they're really good and they're working for a great team and they're moving around, that is at the belly of what TA did. They found that person. They brought that qualified person in. They cultivated that relationship. They got them through the interview process. The business loves them. The business is investing. Why shouldn't that come back to TA? So if there are factors that kick out against retention, I think you, through analytics, capture that. But you should give the nod to TA because they are the person who found the person.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying for a 20-year career.
Yeah.
I mean, you could set some kind of time frame that says the first 12 months, depending on where you're having the biggest exit of top talent in your organization. If you're having exits, in the first 6 or 12 or even 18 months, I think 18 feels about right. That should be a story that should be able to come back to TA and give a lot of credit to the organization for doing, a great job.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very easy to say, oh, well, there might be these things that happen once they're in, so we don't want to touch it. But you just kind of came up with a solution yourself in a minute, which was, you might have exceptions, which are fine, but you can look at that via analytics. If they've given on an exit interview a terrible score for their hiring manager, then you take that into consideration.
Yes.
And then there's a performance issue there that you can solve. And I actually think that if, one of the things you see in revenue teams when I manage revenue teams is, if you have the sales team incentivized on revenue, they will actually focus on the quality of the deal that they're bringing in, and they won't just kick it across to customer success.
That's right.
And it encourages the team to work as one.
Right.
A lot more because they have skin in the game.
Right.
And I feel like the same impact could happen with what we're talking about if TA have skin in the game.
Yes.
And managers know they're on the hook too.
Yep.
It's probably going to lift everyone.
Yeah. And I haven't bumped into a TA leader or even if you go, often let's get off leaders. If you talk to recruiters and sourcers, they will say they want onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
They, there's like fear of passing over a talented person to, the HRIS support team. Not that there's anything wrong with that group, but it's like, you have a whole group that hasn't been part of the deal. The deal is managing the candidate all the way to hire. They haven't been in those conversations. They don't know what, quirks or needs this person has. The TA recruiter and the sourcer knows that. And so if there was a way to sort of create better bridges or connections between the product, which is this talented person we just found that's coming in to buy what we have, and making sure that you're able to sort of integrate them into a team in a way that feels seamless and thoughtful and careful, right? That just, again, creates more skin in the game for the TA function. And I think it actually ensures that, the candidate lands well. I remember at Twitter a couple of times when we would hand off, and it's not that the Twitter machine was pretty good, actually. But we would hand off a candidate to a hiring manager and then on to the onboarding team. And the onboarding experience at Twitter was awesome. But still, you would have often situations where that talented person would come back to the recruiter and ask questions. Trying to navigate this, I'm trying to find this. What does this mean? Because they had that relationship. So why not actually, cultivate that? Again, if they were out of the minutia, if they weren't reading through thousands of resumes, and hopefully that's not happening anymore. Hopefully, I gave a talk last week or a week before at Disrupt HR, and I talked about the fact that if you're still doing interviewing scheduling through humans, like, we need to talk, right? So at the end of the day, because those humans could actually be doing more critical, white glove experiences for candidates and not trying to find a time that works on their Google, calendar. So I just think it's like we should just think about ways in which we can uplift and upskill our TA folks so that we can take this very talented, let's use what most people talk about, software engineer, and make sure that they have such a nice landing in a team. They have all the resources they need. And again, all of that under the umbrella of TA just seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, if I'm a HR person listening to this, I might be like,
Wait, that's my job.
Allison's trying to take all my stuff. But where do you think that HR and TA, where that separation is, or what HR own, what TA own? Do you have kind of an idea of that?
So it's interesting you even said HR and TA. See, I think the ideal scenario is there is a head of talent who owns the end-to-end experience. That's what I think. But if you're in an organization where you feel for strategy reasons that having TA and having talent and even business partners sit in separate functions, then for me, I think I'll go back to what I said before. I think TA should have some ownership, and at some point the Venn chart separates of interacting with that candidate through the first 90 days.
Awesome.
Right? Because that is actually when the person is learning where the bathroom is, what kind of leader are they reporting to, what kind of food do they serve, what is, where are the different floors, what does this mean, what does this not mean, all of these things. And if TA can have some influence of that first 90 days, I think is where TA should stop.
Awesome. I really like this idea. And you mentioned just on a point there about technology and, about how if you're still doing manual kind of human-centric coordination, you're probably living in the past somewhat.
And I hate saying that because I literally at the end of this conference I spoke at, 5 people came up to me and said, "We're still doing it," and I can't get them to stop doing it. And it's like, I don't want to downplay, interviewing, scheduling, because those folks are so passionate and they really do want to do a good job. But there just are better ways, I think.
And so that brings me on to a point of, the big thing, and you probably heard it when you were at Disrupt HR and everywhere else, is, technology is all people are talking about, how to increase productivity or efficiency by AI. How are you seeing that influence TA at the moment? And I think how should TA leaders be thinking about this when they're thinking about the future TA role, TA leadership role?
It feels like it's like three categories of TA functions or HR functions. A third, call it a third, HR folks have like dived right in, right? They're baking AI into their individual tools, meaning me, Allison, I have my own set of tools that I can work with. It's baked into the TA applications and how we onboard and hire people, and it's baked into how we use our full sort of human capital, systems. That's about a third. I would say roughly, based on my research and again just recent conversations with leaders, about 40% are just asking for budget, right? So they want it in their 2025 plan. They're dabbling and maybe piloting, but for the most part, they're asking for it. And then there's a group that's just not even started, right? They're just not interested for similar reasons, right? Mostly people come to the bias that AI seems to demonstrate. There's a huge fear out there around replacing people in their jobs. And I think even for a lot of leaders, it's this scary thing that feels like non-human. So therefore, we're a human business. AI is non-human, so therefore stay away. I think that group of people who aren't even playing or testing or trying things, they're gonna end up losing, especially the war for talent. I would think about it in three phases. We should be giving a set of AI tools to individuals. I think we are too dependent on people analytics functions to give us the data and the information that we need. I think, it's very easy to leverage AI to even go out on tools like Indeed and LinkedIn and find people. And I think, there's a set of tools that I need to do my job as an individual. I think that there are core applications, especially in the human space, that start to break down these walls that we've created. So, the L&D function has their tech, and TA has their tech, and other functions have their tech, and the central function of people analytics are responsible for matching all this data together to create a report. AI is the biggest opportunity to break down all those walls, and to create processes, machine learning, to go across the entire people plate or business tech plate, and basically serve up real intel for leaders to make strategic decisions. And then obviously like fixing things like dare I say, but like the systems that have been around for a while, like Workday, really optimizing those platforms so that each of their aspects of their program can actually talk to each other and create much more seamless reporting. So I think you would be remiss in just investing AI in, for example, Workday. I think you need to be thinking about the individual and what tools they have. And I've been advising a few clients to just start small. Don't try to fix the Workday. Start small. What's your biggest problem? What's your biggest problems? Is it finding candidates? Is it interview scheduling? Is it what is it? What's your biggest problem? Put a task force together made up of people within that function, TA, and some IT people and some compliance people, and solve the problem. And give yourself a time frame, 30 days. In 30 days, we're going to solve this and we're going to see a change. And put some real metrics in place and pilot. And then just start to tick off problems. Instead of trying to do what we do in people functions, which is solve this, let's just solve this. And I do think if someone said to me, which area of the people team would you focus on in terms of technology? I would say TA.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's our biggest opportunity. I think skills-based hiring is going to be a game changer for TA if we can get organizations around it. And you can't do any of that without some investment in technology.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting you talk about that pilot because I think actually a lot of the platforms would be open to you saying, look, I need to go and put this business case together to my boss or leadership, but they want to see 2 months, 3 months worth of data and information. And I think it's much more powerful, like you're saying, is to go to your leadership and say, look, I've got this really great idea. This is my hypothesis.
Yes.
and I've got the vendor to agree to 3-month pilot,
Yes.
and I'll show you at the end what results we have.
Yes.
That seems like a really good conversation to have, easy conversation to have.
And, oh, by the way, I can use this free product or I can use this tool that is maybe not the one we're going to go with, but it's, going to cost us like a fraction of what we would have to pay if we were going to go to some big, human capital management system to solve this for us.
Yeah.
So let us just do this and try it out. And again, I think it's when you're looking at that list of problems, you may not rank that interview scheduling. And I know I keep coming back to that, but it's like, that's people, that's calls, that's emails, trying to negotiate around one meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, just process that for a second. And so if you said, we're going to solve interview scheduling.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're going to solve. Or we're going to solve diversity hiring if that happens to be an issue. Find that problem that's really a problem for you, for the business, not a problem just for HR, but a bit for the business. Cost is always, if something is costing a lot of money, our time or resources, that's always a good sort of way of sort of characterizing something as a significant problem. And then just focus on that problem. Put a SWAT team around it, solve it, present the outcome, and then chip away at the issues.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder, when you were just talking through that process, I wonder how many leaders, when they're trying to solve this problem, think about the narrative and the story first. Of like, okay, here are the problems. Like, now, how do we convince someone that this is...
Everybody does.
Yeah. How is this a problem how do I position this in the best way to my leadership with the right data, with the right story, to get it across the line?
And a lot of that's culture, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know how things work here, and we got to put together a PowerPoint deck, and there's nobody that loves PowerPoint more than I do. But it's like, we've got to put together a strategy. We've got to tell a story. We've got to convince them to let us have this money. I think that it had its time. And again, I was one of those leaders. Well, can you put together a couple of slides so we can go tell a story? I think now it has to be, this is the problem. And this is how much it's costing us.
Yeah.
And we think we can, get it done faster and save this much money.
Yeah. Simple.
One slide.
Yeah.
And that's the story. And I always think about it in this way. It's like, what's the current situation? Interview scheduling costs us a lot of money, to the tune of this many resources, this many dollars, this many hours, da-da-da. What's the implication of that? Well, we still miss meetings. We still miss times. Our candidates are not having the best experience because they just want you to send them a link. It costs money. What's the recommendation? We spend 30 days doing nothing but piloting this group of recruiters and sourcers and schedulers on this product. We'll come back to you in 30 days with the answer. It's one page.
Yeah.
Current situation, implication, and the recommendation.
Yeah. Love that. So if like a TA leader is thinking, okay, the future is changing around me, like there's 3 things I need to focus on to be ahead. Yeah. And like my new role, I need to start thinking about like leveling up these areas or focusing on these areas. What would you say are the kind of 3 main things a TA leader should be thinking about to kind of future-proof themselves or be ahead of the curve, do you think?
I would say tech stack would be at the top of that list. I would say, I know this is going to be radical, but I don't think that TA has to be divided by business. I think there are huge opportunities to think about ways in which to get TA to work across the business areas, if nothing else, to repurpose talent. And I would get a team focused on skills-based hiring. I think skills-based hiring, which is really about, we're hiring Allison today to do that, but when she's done, we need her to do that. And we're going to be proactive about that. And oh, by the way, Allison knows that, right? Because the conversations we're having with her is that we want you to come in and do this job. And then, in about 12 months, we want to switch you over to this team and focus on that. Imagine that conversation in the interview process versus you're hiring for one role and now all of a sudden you're done and you're kind of waiting for something else to happen.
Yeah.
Now you're going to start looking outside. You're going to be jazzed about the one where they've kind of mapped out, like we're going to move, you're going to be shaking things up across the organization. So I would say tech, I would look for opportunities to really think about TA across the entire organization, and that includes global. And I would be doubling down on skills-based hiring.
Love it. So this has been an awesome conversation, super insightful, but I want to finish by asking you what you're most excited about regarding TA.
2024 for me has been really about doing my own research and doing a lot of learning. You know, I always feel weird that I'm the one in the room talking about AI, and it's like, you know, I've been working for, 20 years. So I'm actually excited about TA. Yeah. I'm excited about AI and TA. I think it's going to change the world for this organization. I have met, like I said, I've been in multiple functions in the people team, but there is nothing more energetic than talking to a bunch of recruiters and sourcers who just want to win. So I'm most excited about what this new paradigm in terms of how we're thinking about TA, or how some organizations are thinking about TA, and what it will mean for the function. And I'm most excited about being a part of that, either in the seat of advocating, strategy, being the one in the room, sitting across from the naysayer saying, like, well, you would be wrong in this situation. I'm just excited about what this new paradigm shift will mean, and what it will mean for this group of people who really just want to do amazing work. That's what I'm most excited about.
Awesome. And how can people find you? How can they work with you, partner, collaborate?
I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm doing a lot of content creation, mainly because I'm just trying to, again, drive change. So LinkedIn, Twitter, obviously things like Instagram, I'm out there. And it's www.texni.com, TXNI, which is where I do a lot of strategic consulting with actually recruiting startups. And super excited about what's coming. And then I have a new venture that I've launched, which is called Leadership Rewired, which is www.Leadership Rewired. And it's where I'm doing a lot of executive coaching and people strategy. So those are places where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, same here.
And hopefully you enjoyed the conversation too. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to catch more content in the future. Thank you.